What is up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point. And it is the Season 3 finale of Set Point, as we have a lot to get into volleyball-wise. First and foremost, the 2022 AVCA Women's Volleyball Coaches Polls have been released. Who is the early number one going into next week's matches? And we're going to play ourselves a little game when it comes to that. We're going to play a game called Too High or Too Low. Also, we have a little bit of a breakdown of the top 10 recruiting classes of the NCAA Women's Volleyball 2022. Which team is the number one recruiting class, and also which team is being slept on. And we also have some AVP and some beach volleyball to recap, as we had a U.S.-American pair win an international tournament. So hand me a volleyball, set up the net. For the last time in Season 3, I'm about to serve you up some volleyball action here on Set Point. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you the Season 3 finale of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome one, welcome all to another edition of Set Point. Thank you all for joining me on this beautiful Monday afternoon, Monday evening, Monday, wherever you are listening from. Either way, you are listening to Set Point on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. You have made your way into episode number 155 and the end of Season 3 of Set Point. Without any further delay, let's get on into that volleyball action. But first and foremost, Set Point would not be where it is without IE Sports Radio. You can follow IE Sports Radio on several different platforms. On Twitter, Instagram, and on TikTok, they're available at IE Sports Radio. And on Facebook, they're available by typing in the word IE, then sports, then radio. Also, they have a website, www.iesportsradio.com. And when you go there, you will see a Patreon link, which starts at $5 a month. This will get you a shout out from all of our shows on the network, and higher tiers include IE Sports Radio merchandise, access to IESRU, the podcasting university of IE Sports Radio, and even a chance to be featured on a segment of our flagship show, The Defining Moment with Larry B. Thank you, everyone, for all of your support and for help making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that sports. Big shout out to our Patreon supporters, Bay Area Raised Apparel, Marcus Losgreat, Key to the Gate, and a donor that wishes to remain anonymous. And if you are listening live, I definitely appreciate you can listen live on the Spreaker app that I just retweeted through the Set Point account. If you are following Set Point on Twitter, you can find Set Point at set_point.ie, and my personal Twitter account is at Teran Rodriguez1. Both of those Twitter accounts will be available in the description. All right, with all that said and done, let's get on into the volleyball action as we welcome Adam Karnick and Mike Pat into the chat room as they both greet me. Adam says, beach volleyball, that's my game. Well, you know what? We're actually going to start off with some beach volleyball, and yes, I'm going to mix it up. Y'all were probably expecting AVCA or AVCA preseason polls or NCAA women's volleyball. No, I'm going to pump fake you and basically fake y'all out, as I'm basically going to start off with some beach volleyball. So over the weekend, there was an international tournament that happened in Hamburg, Germany, as basically it was an international tournament, and It was something I wasn't really focusing on until this pair, Kelly Cheng and Betsy Flint, were basically mowing their way through the competition. And they actually had to win their way through pool play, then make it to the top 16, and then win their way through that. So eventually Kelly Cheng and Betsy Flint won the whole Volleyball World Hamburg Elite 16 tournament, as they won all 6 matches, and winning wasn't the impressive thing. The most impressive thing about them winning was that they only dropped 1 set throughout the entire tournament. Yes, 1 set throughout the entire tournament that they dropped was all they lost. Other than that, they were pretty much, I wouldn't say untouchable. They did have some close sets in some of their matches. Like, take, for example, their first match, they faced a pair from Brazil. They won the first set 25-23. Bear in mind that the target score is 21, but you have to win by 2 points. So basically, they went into a deuce game. And then the second set, Cheng and Flint won it 21-13 as they swept the pair from Brazil. I was told that that was one of the top pairs from Brazil, and that was considered an upset. So overall, that was a big way to start pool play action. And then this was the only set that Cheng and Flint lost, as the first set, the two lost to a pair from Germany 22-20. And then in the second set, they had to go to another deuce game as Kelly Cheng and Betsy Flint won the second set 25-23. And then in the third set, Cheng and Flint edged out the pair from Germany 15-13 as they wound up winning their pool and advanced. Oh no, they didn't win their pool. They had to win one more pool play match, and then they advanced to the Elite 8, or the top 8. And they were able to do so as they took down, I want to say it was a pair from Serbia in 2 sets. They didn't have too much trouble in the first set as they won it 21-10. In the second set, they did, however, have to win the second set 22-20 as they were able to win their pool and advance to the quarterfinals. So Cheng and Flint had to face a pair from Spain, as I want to say one of the players was from TCU. I don't know the name of the exact said player, and I'd have to look that up, but Cheng and Flint eventually won the match in straight sets, as the first set was very tight. But Cheng and Flint won that first set 28-26, and then in the second set they won it 21-16, which, my goodness, this was kind of a roller coaster ride for Cheng and Flint when it came to some of these tight sets. It was very interesting, yet very entertaining if you're a volleyball fan, a beach volleyball fan. And obviously it's a lot of stress on Cheng and Flint, but to win those close sets is quite something. And then this was probably one of 2 matches that didn't go to a deuce game, as in the semifinals, Cheng and Flint took down a pair from Germany. Bear in mind, this was played in Hamburg, Germany, so obviously there was a home crowd for the German pair. But either way, Kelly Cheng and Betsy Flint won the match 21-17 and 21-18. And like I said, that was one of 2 matches that did not go to a deuce game. In other words, it didn't go past the 21-point mark target. So that was the semifinals. And in the final, they took down a pair from Poland, as Cheng and Flint won the first set 21-19, and then they won the second set 21-18. And that was how Kelly Cheng and Betsy Flint won the tournament in Hamburg, Germany. Also, it was more sweet for Betsy Flint as she actually won the tournament on her birthday. So to get a gold medal is very impressive, and to win a tournament with your partner. It's just quite amazing that they were able to do that. And that's the best birthday present anyone can ask for. A quote that Betsy Flint and Kelly Cheng said in a recent article when they won the tournament. Before the tournament started, they discussed it often. We want to dominate the World Tour. This was basically a World Tour tournament. This didn't have anything to do with like AVP. Basically, this was a pro international tournament, and honestly, it had nothing to do with AVP. But Kelly Cheng and Betsy Flint said they want to dominate the World Tour, and it's a lofty goal considering there are lots of talented players and everyone is good, as Cheng said. However, by the way, they beat a pair from Switzerland. They didn't beat a pair from Poland. They beat a pair from Switzerland. as they defeated Nina Brunner and Tanja Huberli in the final. But back to Cheng's quote, "Everyone's good out here and everyone can have good weekends, but we discussed it a lot. We want to dominate the World Tour." And sure enough, they were able to win that match, the tournament in Hamburg, Germany. So it's very impressive that they were able to win, and also winning on Flint's birthday is also just as impressive. I really think it's quite astounding that they were able to win, so I feel they have potential. I really think that it's going to be quite interesting for them going forward, especially when they have an AVP tournament. I imagine they might be participating in the up-and-coming AVP tournament. It's going to be the Manhattan Beach Open. A little bit on that later, but for Kelly Cheng and Betsy Flint, they just need to just reminisce in all this, and this is obviously a surreal moment for them. I really think that these two are vastly underrated, and I think they could do big things. Now, obviously, I'm not going to put them on a pedestal and say they're going to be the next April Ross and Alex Kleinman. No. But they are going to be a pair to watch for, and probably a pair that no one wants to face. I want to say they've won an AVP tournament. Don't quote me on that, but winning this whole Hamburg Elite 16 beach volleyball tournament was quite nice. So I really think that this is going to be a big stepping stone going forward. And to close out, I just think that it's impressive that they were able to represent the United States. And I don't think there was any easy matches in that tournament, and yet they made it look so easy. They just swept all but one of their opponents, and the fact that they were able to also defeat a talented pair from Brazil early on is quite impressive as well. And also, it's really tough to lose in this tournament. It's tough to not lose in this tournament, because once you reach the top 8, it's basically win or go home. You basically have your margin of error is basically slim to none. And the fact that they almost lost a match in pool play means that you just got to be more careful. But I feel that all those close sets that they won and that one close set that they lost really toughened them up. And I really think that Cheng and Flint can use this as momentum going forward, just as they used the close sets that they won in some of the matches going forward into the rest of the match. So that is going to do it for international beach volleyball play. Jumping over to the AVP, yes, I am going to jump into the AVP. The Manhattan Beach Open is this weekend. It is a 3-day event, as it'll go from August 19th all the way to August 21st. That is the good news. And you're probably thinking, well, Teran lives in the California area because Manhattan Beach is in California. However, I have something going on Saturday, and then I'm obviously busy on Friday and Sunday. So, unfortunately, I will not be attending the Manhattan Beach Open. I will be discussing where I'm going to be on Saturday, so you'll see. Also at the end of the video, or not the end of the video, the end of the show, I will have a special announcement for next week's episode of Set Point, which will be opening Season 4. And don't worry, it's nothing bad, so don't hold your breath and make yourself wonder, is Teran going to retire or take a hiatus? Nah. So unfortunately, there is no brackets that have been released. However, there has been an entry list, which makes me happy. And the final seeds and qualifiers for the main tournaments will be updated tomorrow. As of today, this is being released on August 15th, 2022. So this might get updated, but the entry list consists of, on the men's side, James Schulk and Theo Brunner, who is the top seed. Triborn and Trevor Crabb are the 2 seed. Miles Partain and Paul Lotman, who won the Atlanta Open, are the 3 seed. Troy Field and Chase Buttiger, 4 seed. Taylor Crabb and Taylor Sander, 5 seed. Casey Patterson and David Lee, 6 seed. Miles Evans and Andy Benish, 7 seed. And then Evan Corey and Bill Kolinsky are the 8 seed. And I'm just going to skip all the way down to to basically the first wild card team. It's Lev Prima and Jacob Landell. They'll be in the wild card because of the CBVA series. And then the final team that made the main draw cut is Jake Dydrich and Hagen Smith. I guess I should also throw in Cody Caldwell and Ed Ratlich, who also won in a previous AVP tournament. And Davidson asked, Chase Budinger, the basketball player? No, it is not Chase Budinger, the basketball player. I didn't know there was a Chase Budinger in basketball. So it's actually Davidson's Chase Budinger is spelt with 2 G's, as this Chase Budinger, who's from Hermosa Beach that plays beach volleyball, is spelt with 1 D. So, but I did not know there was a Chase Budinger in basketball, so the more you know. So thank you, Davidson Crooks, who popped in the chat room. I appreciate you tuning in. So that's that on the men's side. Jumping over to the women's side, the top seed will be Sarah Sponsel and Therese Cannon. Second seed will be Kelly Kolinsky and Sarah Hughes. 3 seed is Kelly Cheng and Betsy Flint. 4 seed, Gina Urango and Julia Scholes, who just recently won the Atlanta Open. And then Zana Muno and Brandy Wilkerson is the 5th seed. Taryn Cloth and Kristen Nuss are the 6th seed. Sarah Pavin and Mackenzie Ponnett is the 7th seed. Larissa Maestrini and Lily Maestrini are the 8th seed. And then it goes down, so on and so forth. So the first wild card happens to be Kylie DeBerg and Callie York, who is a wild card from the Walpaka Tour Series. And then Carly, I'm going to mispronounce her name probably. Carly Skajote and Macy Jerger are also a wild card. The final automatic qualifier for the main draw is Fallon Fonoi Moana and Chelsea Rice. And then everyone else is pretty much a wild card before and after that. So now Davidson's got me interested. He says he played volleyball as well. So that's really interesting. I'm actually going to look that up on when it comes to some downtime. But yeah, that's crazy. Chase Budinger did play basketball, and now I'm curious if he actually played basketball. So yeah, I'm going to basically look that up whenever I can. But yeah, I feel Davidson says Chase Budinger was an All-American in his prep days before playing basketball at Arizona. Yeah, and it's the same spelling, so I'm actually quite... Yeah, he is. This is the same Chase Budinger. So my mind is blown with Davidson having made note of this. So Chase Budinger, who Davidson brought up, he basically did play basketball, and now he's playing beach volleyball. So this is a Snapple fun fact of the day, and yes, Chase Budinger is indeed from California. So he's from Encinitas, California. So, and he was an All-American in basketball. So great stuff, Davidson. I actually am quite impressed that I learned something new today, believe it or not. So my mind is blown right now. So, all right, getting back to the AVP on the women's side. So that's basically it. The brackets have not been released yet. I imagine it'll be released on Wednesday, if not Thursday, but it'll probably be Wednesday or Tuesday. Tuesday at the earliest. Wednesday, most likely. I highly doubt it'll be released Thursday, which is the day before the tournament. So anyway, so jumping back into the AVP, it is going to be an interesting tournament just because this is kind of like a home court advantage for like everyone that basically grew up in California or grew up in that Manhattan Beach area. And I'm really excited to see who will come out. I think it's wide open for anybody on the men's and or women's side just because you have so much talent, and honestly, anyone could possibly win it. Even some of the more dark horse pairs such as Haley Harward and Lauren Fendrick. But either way, it's going to be a fun little tournament. We even get to see Megan Kraft in this tournament as she pairs with Emily Stockman. That's a pair I haven't really heard much of ever since Kraft and Stockman won that international tournament. But I would also not be surprised to see if they won the Manhattan Beach Open. So there's that for the AVP right there. Now we got to jump into some NCAA women's volleyball action. And basically, the top 25 preseason AVCA polls just came out today. And I am going to be honest, it was actually released on a volleyball show called Six Rotations. This is hosted, I want to say it's sponsored by the AVCA, and it's basically like I wouldn't say it's like their partner, but it's basically the main bread and butter volleyball show for the AVCA. It only covers NCAA women's volleyball, and that's kind of my knock, whereas this show, Set Point, covers everything volleyball, including NCAA men's volleyball, NCAA beach volleyball, all that jazz. So, but I like it. Daniel Gilman and former USC/Texas coach Mick Haley do an excellent job of breaking down teams, and they have amazing interviews. They really are probably the best volleyball duo when it comes to like this NCAA women's volleyball show. So, funny story about that. So, I actually, by the time the top 25 was released live during their show, I actually was working, and I had to think of a way to not miss the top 25 and see who is basically number 1 all the way down to 25. So I basically had to hide away from work and make sure I caught Daniel and Mick. So, funny story. So that's basically how I snuck away from work just to watch the AVCA preseason polls get released live. So, yeah. Jumping over to the top 25, 25 through 21 consist of San Diego at 25, USC, yes, Southern California, at 24, Kansas at 23, Utah at 22, and Western Kentucky at 21. 20 through 16 consists of Penn State at 20, Oregon at 19, Creighton at 18, Illinois at 17, and Baylor at 16. 15 through 11 consists of Florida at 15, Stanford at 14, Purdue at 13, UCLA at 12, and Kentucky at 11. 10 through 6 consists of BYU at 10, Georgia Tech at 9, Washington at 8, Ohio State at 7, and Pitt at 6. 5 through 1 consists of Minnesota at 5, Louisville at 4, Wisconsin, the reigning champion, at 3, Texas at 2, and your number 1 team when it comes to the AVCA Division I Women's Volleyball Coaches Poll is, in the preseason, Nebraska, the Cornhuskers. So that's your top 25 right there. You thought that was basically going to be it now, did you? No. I got to break down this preseason. So I'm not even remotely close to surprised to see Nebraska at number 1. I've said it before, I've said it, and I'll say it again. Nebraska has one of the top freshman classes in the nation. They return a huge chunk of their team that made it all the way to the championship match last season. They have some good transfers coming in. Although they just lost Kayla Caffey, this Nebraska team is something to watch for. And the same can be said for Texas. They got some good transfers in. While they did lose a few players, I feel that Texas is going to be tough. They're probably a very close second right behind Nebraska. And Adam says, Nebraska is that typical? Yes, Nebraska is a women's volleyball school. They have been for heaven knows how long, ever since John Cook has taken over, and they're going to continue to be a volleyball school. So, yes, to answer your question, Adam, yes, that is typical. And they're from Big Ten country. So, we're actually going to play ourselves a little bit of a game. We're going to play a game called Too High or Too Low. So basically, I'm going to break down the top 25 to the teams that I think are either too high or too low or just right. So we'll start with number 25, and we'll work our way up to the top. San Diego. So San Diego obviously had a one-and-done season. They're definitely one of the top non-Power 5 schools, in my opinion, and I really think they have talent. They bring back Katie Lukes and a few others, and they always have a good freshman class. They always have a good freshman class that they bring in, and they always have a good team year in and year out. Now, do I think they're rank-worthy? That remains to be seen. I think they're just... I don't know if they're ready to be ranked just yet. I mean, if you remember last year, they lost in the first round of the NCAA tournament to Rice in straight sets. And I think San Diego might be a work in progress. I feel they have what it takes to be ranked on a consistent basis, but I think they're going to be a work in progress. So I think they're borderline of just right and too high. Jumping over to 24, we have USC. Now, USC is the only team in the preseason top 25 to have missed the NCAA tournament but still be ranked. So for USC, they actually had themselves quite the busy offseason. Last year, like I said, they missed the NCAA tournament. They didn't really have too many standout wins, which I think is disappointing, and I feel that they had talent, it's just that they didn't put to good use, and they kept losing heartbreaker after heartbreaker. Like, they lost a 5-set match to Creighton, which definitely could have benefited them. They lost 2 5-setters to Oregon, also probably could have boosted their chance of making the NCAA tournament. Then they also had an ugly loss to Denver to start the season. You can't lose that. You just can't. However, USC, while they did have some departures, they have some key players that come to their team, such as Kayla Williams, Lindsay Miller, Skylar Fields, and Kelly Berry. Skylar Fields is the biggest one to come to USC, as she was an All-American, and she was one of Texas's top players, so the fact that she comes to USC is a huge get for the Trojans, and that is probably something USC kind of lacks of. They need that big outside hitter to replace Brooke Botkin, who obviously graduated. And then, obviously, with Mia Tuaniga on their team, just to name one of their few players, I think she can definitely work her magic when it comes to setting the offense. I really think USC has potential, and they also have a couple other players. They have, from their freshman class, Riley McInnes, whose dad, if I recall, whose dad Willie played football at USC. I think she can make a big impact. And also, Adania Fa'umuina is definitely going to be a player to watch for on USC as well. They're only freshmen, but they're very talented freshmen. So Adania and Riley can definitely do big things for the Trojans. I really think that USC can make the NCAA tournament, and they were chosen to finish, I want to say it was like 5th in the Pac-12, if I remember last week. It was either 5th or 6th, but either way, there aren't too many high expectations for the Trojans, but I really think that they can make the NCAA tournament this year. So I feel they're borderline of too low, just a little bit, if not just right. I really think that USC has that potential. As Davidson Crooks says, Nebraska is legit in volleyball, and he says when he lived out there, the top females in the nation basically went there, and then he also says his old alma mater was one of the top prep schools in the country and fed them players. Davidson is spitting some good facts in the chat room on Spreaker, so hats off to you, Davidson, for that information right there. So anyway, back to the top 25. So going back to the AVCA top 25, number 23 just so happens to be Kansas. So Kansas, they're an interesting team. Last year they made the Sweet 16, and they do have a good returning core. I think they're probably one of the few teams that could vie in the Big 12. However, they're not going to beat Texas, and I don't know if they'll beat Baylor. They did lose their top middle to to Wisconsin who transferred. I don't know if Kansas is rank worthy. I think they are. I feel they're borderline of like maybe and just right. I think 23 is kind of just right for them, especially with the Sweet 16 run that they had. So I think Kansas is just right where they are. And then Utah is 22. Now, Utah, obviously they lost quite a bit of talent from last year. They made it all the way to the round of 32 before getting dismissed by BYU, as they lost Danny Drews to graduation, and I think it's going to be tough to recover from. So for Utah, I kind of think they're I think they're just right. I was going to say they're a little bit too low in terms of rankings, but I think Utah is just right where they are. So I definitely think they're going to turn heads in the Pac-12. I think they're underrated in my opinion. So I feel Utah is possibly going to turn heads in the Pac-12. But don't sleep on them either. I really think that their matchup against BYU is going to be a barn burner. Obviously, it's the Holy War. And then jumping over to 21, we have Western Kentucky. This is a just right. This is 100% just right. Western Kentucky is going to schedule tough this year, as they have Louisville and Kentucky this season. And then Western Kentucky, for me, I think is just right where they are. Their conference is the Conference USA. And for me, I think that they don't really get stiff competition outside of Rice. So I think Western Kentucky is going to be just fine where they're at 21. Jumping over to 20 is Penn State. So Penn State is it feels weird seeing Penn State at number 20. I feel Penn State is a little too low just because it's just so weird seeing a Penn State and 20 in the same sentence. They're normally like in the mid-teens, if not top 10, but remember, they didn't really have the best season last year. They lost quite a bit to graduation. They have a new head coach, and I think it's going to be a work in progress. I feel they're just a little too low. I think they should still be in like the 17, 18 slot, but that's just my opinion. And then 19 is Oregon. Oregon is another team that I think is borderline of unknown. I feel they might be a little too high. I can't really say. For instance, I feel Oregon is a slightly too high, but these Pac-12 schools are always good year in and year out, and Oregon is no exception. And obviously, returning Brooke Nuneviller is huge for them. I really think she can be the spark for Oregon this year in a loaded Pac-12 conference. So I think Oregon's a little too high, but I think that they'll change my mind. Jumping over to 18, we have Creighton. So Creighton is another non-Power 5 conference school that I think is one of the best in the nation. They sometimes get some stiff competition in the Big East, mainly from Marquette. Last year they lost to the likes of UConn and St. John's. But I think Creighton is, I don't know, I think they're just right, if not a little bit too low. But I think Creighton, for the most part, is just right at number 18. 17 is Illinois. So for those of you that don't know, Illinois was the team that stunned the previous season's reigning champion Kentucky in the round of 32. And they returned quite a bit of players from last year's roster. I really think that this Illinois team has what it takes to take the next biggest step. And I think the Fighting Illini are in great shape. I want to say that they're maybe too low on the coaches poll, but time will tell if they could rise to the occasion. The Big Ten is what's really going to test them. And then 16 is Baylor. So here's where I think this is kind of where I think we're getting into the too highs. I think Baylor's too high. They lost quite a bit to graduation. They lost Avery Skinner to graduation, as well as Yasonia Presley. I feel Baylor is not going to be the same Baylor team from last year. Yes, they're probably going to be the only team that challenges Texas, but that's kind of where the buck stops. They're obviously going to make the NCAA tournament, but I don't think they're the Baylor from a few seasons ago. I don't think Baylor... I'm not trying to say Baylor is bad. I'm just saying that Baylor isn't the same team from last year or the year before or the year after or the year before that. So I think Baylor is a little too high. And then 15 is Florida. Now I'm probably going to get a lot of backlash for this. Florida is too high, and I think they may be the two highest team on this list, if that makes sense. I think Florida, in my opinion, should be in the low teens, or the high teens, the 18, 19, maybe in the 20s, just because they lost quite a bit to graduation. Yes, they have a good freshman class, and they did get some transfers, but I don't know. I think Florida, in my opinion, is not quite there yet. Like last year, they just did not scream to me legit team. Yes, they made it all the way to the Sweet 16, and they even beat Miami, which I thought was going to actually have a Sweet 16 run. But I just think Florida, they don't scream out elite team. I think they're a work in progress. The entire SEC is kind of a work in progress, just because Kentucky lost a few transfers. Florida is kind of still working on some kinks. Mississippi State is going to be good, but we still have to see if they'll be super legit. And then Tennessee, I'll get into who I think got snubbed in a little bit, but for me, I think Florida's too high. I don't think they should be 15. I think they should be like 18 through 21. Florida fans, get your shotguns ready. Jumping to 14 is Stanford. Now, Stanford is just right in my opinion. They have a lot of talent from last year's team. I want to say they only lost one, if not two players from last year's team. They return Kendall Kipp, as well as Katie Baird and Cammie Minor from last year's team. And they also have Sammy Francis that returns as well. So I really think Stanford is going to be very good. I think Stanford and Washington are my picks to possibly win the Pac-12, if not Stanford winning the Pac-12 altogether. I think Stanford, heck, I could maybe say Stanford's a little too low just because of all that talent that they return. I really think that Stanford has that potential to take the next step, and I feel Stanford's getting slept on. They're starting to pick up the pieces after that disastrous 2020 season, or abbreviated 2020 season, where they didn't make the NCAA tournament, and they had so much going on off the court, but I digress on that. Davidson says that Creighton has finally gotten around to getting those solid volleyball players in the state. Yeah, and it's kind of tough for them to recruit just because most of those players are going to Nebraska, because Creighton is kind of in the same area as Nebraska, and Nebraska obviously is the more attractive site, but Creighton is just as good, and I think Creighton is really turning heads. Jumping over to 13, we have Purdue. So Purdue, I feel, is borderline too high. Yes, they did make the Elite Eight, but they did lose a lot of play. They did lose quite a bit to graduation, such as Caitlin Newton, and I think they lost a few players here and there to the transfer portal. But Purdue has a good young core that they return. I feel Purdue is going to be a work in progress. I was going to put them too high. I think they're just a little too high. I think you could flip Stanford and Purdue. But other than that, I think Purdue is going to be underrated this year. Jumping over to 12 is UCLA. Now, I'm going to get some backlash for this. I think UCLA is too high. Now, UCLA always has a good team. There's no denying that. But I want to say they were mainly carried mostly by Mac May. Mac May obviously was a talented player last year, and I think she could have made a case for AVCA Player of the Year. But what is UCLA going to do without Mac May? They have quite a bit of players that'll step up in her place, such as Charity Looper, to name one. But I don't know. I don't know if UCLA screams to me true top 15 team. I definitely think they are good, and they did get some talented players from the transfer portal, such as Mackenzie Cole, libero, Peyton Dueck, libero, Lauren Forte, middle blocker, and Maddie McKissock, setter. Maddie McKissock transferring from Florida was huge because last year Shelby Martin was setting the offense for UCLA. But now with Maddie McKissock as the setter, they don't have to go to a younger setter. Not that that would be a bad idea. It's just that would Mike Sealy really want to have a freshman setting? Probably not. But you never know. Mike Sealy is that interesting coach. But for now, I think UCLA is a little too high. I think they're just a tad bit too high. I think they're still top 15 material. I just don't think they're number 12. Number 11 just so happens to be Kentucky. So Kentucky is a very interesting team. A team that lost in the round of 32, and a team that has that lost both of its talented players. They lost Avery Skinner after her senior year, and they lost Maddie Skinner, the younger one, to Texas. So, and my mistake, Maddie McKissock transferred from Georgia Tech, and I got the McKissocks mixed up. Her sister plays for Florida, and Maddie McKissock plays for Georgia Tech. So my apologies. Thank you to ACC Volley Talk for correcting me on that. My apologies on that. I got those two mixed up. I had a feeling I was mixing up the two, so appreciate the catch on that. But anyway, jumping over to Kentucky, this is kind of an interesting team right here. On paper, they always have a good team, and I think the SEC is theirs for the taking. However, 11, I feel they're kind of deserving of it. I think they're a work in progress, and I just think they're just right. But if I see them dropping a few matches here and there, I'm going to wonder, why was this team ranked 11 and not anything lower? Don't get me wrong, Kentucky is a great team. I always think that they're that team to watch for. Craig Skinner does an excellent job with his program, but I don't know. Maybe I have to see it to believe it. I feel Kentucky is indeed a good team. I feel they're just right for the time being. They just got to prove it to me. Jumping over to BYU at number 10. So BYU is, I want to say they are deserving of number 10. I still think that they should have made it out of the Sweet 16. I think that they are the highest ranked non-Power 5 conference team. And I think that BYU does have that potential, despite playing in a non-Power 5 conference. Here's the deal for BYU. They always get hindered by such a not-so-good non-conference schedule, and then they mow down the competition in West Coast Conference play for the most part. But now they've scheduled pretty tough this year, so BYU has no excuses this year. They have to come up big, because last year in the regular season, their only loss was to Pitt, and I feel that was kind of the team that hurt them, or not the team that hurt them the most. I feel them being a team with one loss really hurt them, because a little adversity in the regular season doesn't hurt anybody, and obviously they have the Pepperdines, the San Diegos, the Santa Claras, which I think is decent but not great, the LMUs, which is also decent but not great, in their conference, but none of them scream like title contender. BYU is a title contender to a T. So for BYU, I think they're just right. I think they could be they could basically be either or. They could be heads or tails. They could be a little bit high if they start proving themselves, or a little bit low. I feel that BYU is always that team that screams that screams top 10, even though, once again, they're not a Power 5 team. Jumping over to number 9, we have Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech is right where they want to be. Georgia Tech is just right at number 9. They are indeed a top 10 team. Julia Bergman is flat out outstanding. She had a great offseason playing with the Brazilian national team, getting silver in the VNL tournament. There's no doubt in my mind. You can't change my mind that Georgia Tech is number 9, and they deserve to be number 9. They deserve to be top 10. I feel that Bergman could lead Georgia Tech to greater heights. I really am confident that Georgia Tech. I feel Georgia Tech is maybe the most underrated from the ACC, and everyone hypes up Louisville, Pitt, but I think Georgia Tech is kind of that third head on that three-headed monster. I really think that Georgia Tech can turn heads this year, and they're going to be really good this year, especially with Julia Bergman in her senior year. Obviously, she wants to go out with a bang, and I think they have what it takes. So 9 is right where I think they should be. Number 8 is Washington. So Washington, to me, Washington always has that really good team. Now, I don't think they'll win the Pac-12. I think it's going to be close between them and Stanford. I have Stanford just squeaking out the Pac-12. But for Washington, I feel they're kind of top 10 deserving. 8, I feel is fair for them, just because I think that they have a good team on paper. They return quite a bit of players. They did lose Kara Bejima to graduation, but this is a team that always has a good team. And I think that Washington is going to make the Pac-12 sweat. I think they're going to make every team sweat and earn their stripes, because Washington, being coached by Keegan Cook, I think can really do some great things, just because Washington is that perennial powerhouse team from the Pac-12. And with all the talent that they return, despite losing Bejima, I don't think they're going anywhere. I think Washington is kind of where they want to be. 7 is Ohio State. Now, you can make the argument that Ohio State is too low, but I think they're just right. I think you're seeing a pattern with the rest of the top 10. I think Ohio State is kind of right where they want to be. I feel that Ohio State is going to be quite good, and also I think Ohio State is going to be really battle-tested come Big Ten time, because I basically said this on a couple episodes ago, probably way back when. Ohio State has probably the toughest non-conference schedule, and that is a very good thing, just because the Big Ten is a major gauntlet with your Nebraskas, your Wisconsins. Even the Michigans can give Ohio State a bad night. But Ohio State, in my opinion, I think is perfect at 7. Expect them to be ready for Big Ten play, just because you look at their schedule, my goodness. It's just crazy that Jen Flynn Oldenburg just scheduled that much talent on one schedule. They scheduled Texas twice. Oof. And they also scheduled Pitt, I want to say, and it's just amazing. They have San Diego, Louisville, BYU, Georgia Tech, and yes, I was correct. They do have Pitt, and they also have Tennessee, which I think is vastly underrated. I think they probably were snubbed, in my opinion. In my honest opinion. So Ohio State is perfect at 7. Pitt is number 6. Pitt, in my opinion, I think is perfect where they are. If they were top 5, I would have said they're too high, but I think Pitt is just fine. Obviously, they lost quite a bit of players to graduation, such as Kayla Lund and Lecator member Benet, but they did get some good transfers in, such as Courtney Bazario. I really think that is a great transfer, and I really think that Pitt's right where they belong at number 6. Do I think they can make the top 5? Yes. But they do have some tough challenges on that schedule of theirs as well. And I think that's going to be huge, just because the ACC is also a gauntlet. And ACC Volley Talk says, I would have liked to see Georgia Tech a few spots higher, but 9 is fair. I totally agree. I think 6 is fair in my honest opinion. Pitt did lose Pitt lost quite a bit to graduation, yes, but I think they'll be just fine. I think Pitt is going to be just fine even without Kayla Lund. And also they did get a transfer, Juliana Dalton. I also got to make note of that. 6'5" outside hitter from ACC Volley Talk. Yes, I don't have the Pitt roster right in front of me, but Juliana Dalton is huge. 6'5" outside hitter. Woo, it's going to be huge. No pun intended. Anyway, now we get to the top 5. Minnesota at 5. So Minnesota always has a good team. They perennially are good every step of the way. Hugh McCutcheon does an outstanding job, and I think they're deserving of number 5. At first I was like, wait, Minnesota's 5? Do they deserve to be 5? Yes, they do. So, yeah, Minnesota I think is perfect at 5 just because they have a lot of talent this year, and I really think that this could be their year to challenge the Big Ten. Am I putting them on a pedestal and saying they'll win the Big Ten? No. But do I think that they can definitely do so? Absolutely. I think they could challenge the entire Big Ten, and with the players that they have on their team, I think this is not going to be an easy team to take down. Minnesota plays the best of defense. It's just so amazing as they have I'm going to butcher their name, the Wucherer twins, Miranda and McKenna. And that's just a few. They have Melanie Schaffmaster, who runs the offense. And Miranda Wucherer is setter / opposite. That's basically 6'2" right there. Jenna Winas is a returning outside hitter. Cece McGraw, great at libero. The list goes on and on. And then also Elise McGee transferring. I think that is huge right there as well. I think this is another Elise McGee. I'm thinking of the Baylor McGee, so disregard that. But either way, I really think that this is a loaded Minnesota team. I think Minnesota is loaded this year. I really think that this team can go far. Depending on how their defense is on a nightly basis, depends on how far they could truly go. But I like this team. I think Minnesota is worthy of number 5. Again, I was thinking number 5 is too generous, but I think number 5 is just right. Just because your top 4 is basically 3 of the final 4 teams from last year. Number 4 happens to be Louisville. So Louisville, and correct me if I'm wrong, Louisville lost quite a bit to Graduation. You know the whole song and dance. But I think Louisville is kind of right where they belong. If they want to win the ACC, I think the ACC is wide open in my opinion. Between Louisville, Georgia Tech, and Pitt, I think those 3 are my favorites to win the ACC. I'm not going to say who's the exact favorite, but Louisville is up there in terms of favorites. They do have quite a bit of firepower on that team. I'm not even going to pronounce her last name. It's Claire the outside hitter. I promise you I'm not going to mispronounce her last name. Anna DeBeer is up there. Aiko Jones, I think, can do some damage. Elena Scott is going to be big. So, yeah. And they did lose Dilfer and Stevenson from last year. But they also got, in terms of a setter, Raquel Lazaro. So I saw Lazaro back at USC, and she was phenomenal. The only problem was that she lost her starting setter position to Mia Tuaniga, who I think is definitely, who, in my defense, I have seen Mia Tuaniga play, and she is phenomenal. I don't think Raquel Lazaro is bad. I just think that Lazaro didn't really get the chance to shine. Now, could she and Tuaniga had a 6-2 offense going? Possibly. But it is what it is. So I think Lazaro can make a big impact for the Louisville offense. Overall, I don't think Louisville is going to be slept on. If everyone is thinking that Louisville is going to be taking a step back, you're sadly mistaken. Louisville is going to be quite good. They are definitely deserving of the number 4 spot. Do I think they could run through an undefeated regular season? Of course not. Like, if they do that, then I will basically eat a shoe. No, I won't. But I'll eat my words, that's for sure. But Louisville is definitely going to be up there in terms of talent, and I definitely think they're going to be up there overall as a powerhouse team. And then jumping over to number 3, we have Wisconsin. So Wisconsin, in my opinion, they're kind of right where they belong. I think 3 is fair for them, just because the first 2 really bolstered their roster. As for Wisconsin, they also bolstered their roster following the departure of Dana Retke, as they still have Anna Smrek. Danielle Hart returns for her 5th year after she tore her ACL, I want to say. It was either her meniscus or ACL, but either way, Danielle Hart returns to Wisconsin for her 5th year, and then Wisconsin just still has their bases loaded when it comes to overall talent. I definitely do. If everyone is thinking that Wisconsin is taking a step back, well, I hate to tell you this, but you're sadly mistaken. They have Caroline Crawford, who transferred from Kansas. They have Devin Robinson, who I think was pivotal at the right side. Anna Smrek was absolutely amazing at the middle blocker position. Jade Demps was also up there as well. And Julia Orzel, I think, has the potential to be one of the top outside hitters in the nation. My only main concern, and I don't think this is a big problem, I think this is a decent problem, as who's going to be middle blocker 1 and 2? And will some middle blockers have to play right side or have to be in a rotation? Between Danielle Hart and Anna Smrek, as well as Caroline Crawford, it's going to be interesting to see how those 3 are going to be playing out. And then also keep an eye out for Devin Robinson, who also plays middle, but I think she mostly plays right side in my opinion. So I think Wisconsin is perfect at number 3. Even though they are the reigning champs, that's kind of where they want to be. And I really think that Wisconsin is indeed perfect where they are at number 3. To number 2, we have Texas. Well, Texas, while they did lose quite a bit of talent to the transfer portal, they're not going anywhere. I basically said this. Texas winning the Big 12 is theirs for the taking. Like, they'd have to not show up in order to not win the Big 12. They lost Nalani Iosia to the transfer portal, who transferred to Michigan State. No problem. They got Zoe Fleck, the libero from UCLA. They still have Asia O'Neal, Maddie Skinner, and Logan Eggleston, who I think is the sledgehammer of this team. And they just recently got Kayla Caffey from Nebraska. So this Texas team, there's no excuse for them to not make the Final Four. It's either Final Four or bust. I really think that this Texas team is going to be very good this year, and I really am quite impressed by how much strides that this team has. Like, my only concern is for this team is they're not going to get much of a challenge in the Big 12. They may get that one little challenge from like Baylor and Kansas, but they're not going to be like in danger of losing. Fortunately for them, their non-conference schedule does have them somewhat battle-tested. They get Ohio State twice, they have Minnesota one time, and then they have Stanford. That's kind of where the buck stops, as basically they just have Kansas as their big threat, and then Baylor as their big threat. And that's pretty much it. I don't think Texas is going to get challenged outside of that. And then obviously we have your obvious number 1, Nebraska. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Nebraska returns most of its players from last year. B, has a good freshman class coming in. C, they obviously have John Cook. And then D, all of the above. And this is a Nebraska team that just fell short of winning the national championship. Nebraska is always good, and there's no doubt they're my number one team. I actually was very surprised to see them not the favorite to win the Big Ten conference. And this is kind of head-scratching. Nebraska is the number one team in the coaches poll, but they're not the favorite to win the Big Ten conference. So I think this is going to be interesting, to say the least, when it comes to Nebraska. I feel Nebraska is up there in talent, and I really think they're going to be so tough to beat in the Big Ten. I think the entire Big Ten is going to be a gauntlet. I think just when you have a team down for the count, they're going to rise back up and punch you back in the mouth. They're basically like the giant cockroaches you would see in the projects of New York City. You're going to need more than Raid and a gigantic boot to take them down. So I think the entire Big Ten is just so good in women's volleyball. I'm not trying to shun the other conferences, especially the other Power 5 conferences, but I just think the entire Big Ten is just so loaded. And there are even some teams that I think kind of got snubbed from that Big Ten, such as Michigan. Another team that I think got snubbed, and I'm just going to try to wrap this up quickly before I take my break. Another team that I feel got snubbed in terms of the top 25, Florida State, just because they have a lot of hype for their team this season. Now, hype is one thing. Showing it to me on the court is another thing. You also have Tennessee that I think got snubbed, which I think they return. I think they are back on track. I wouldn't say, no, not last season. The season before, when they were one of the first four out, I think they have moved on from that, and I think they are going to be quite the powerhouse team in the SEC. And I think that they return a good chunk of their players. I want to say they return like a majority of their star players. I'm kind of blanking on the setter's name that transferred from Liberty, but either way, I think this Tennessee team is very good. And then the last team that I think got snubbed was Washington State. Now, Washington State, I love to rave about. And Washington State, to me, I feel is the most underrated team. And I think they're the most forgotten about team in the Pac-12 and in the nation. I feel they don't get enough respect just because they're like little sister to Washington in the Pac-12. And everyone just likes to hype up Stanford, UCLA, Washington, and maybe Utah and Oregon. But I think Washington State can turn heads. I think they'll eventually enter that top 25 conversation. And I feel that they return a good chunk of their players from last year. And they didn't really get too many transfers, but that is all right. With the amount of players from that team, from their team from last year that they returned, I think they'll be in good shape. And I guess an honorable mention for my four teams that got snubbed out of the top 25 was Miami, according to ACC Volleyball Talk. I can agree with that. I don't disagree with that. I think Miami should be in the top 25. I feel they are deserving of it. I feel they're borderline of it, and I just feel that they have what it takes. And last year, I didn't really think too much of them going into the season. I didn't think they were overly great, but now they have changed my mind. I think Miami is going to turn heads, and I don't think anyone's sleeping on that team anymore. Do I think they're going to be ACC champions? That remains to be seen, and that's most likely unlikely. But I think Miami is on the map in terms of volleyball school, and I don't think anyone sleeps on them anymore. So no more sleeping on Miami, and I think they deserve to be top 25 as well. I think they're kind of my sleeper snub. They're my sleeper snub because I only had 4 teams picked out, but I guess we could put them as a number 5 team. So that is basically going to do it for my breakdown of the top 25. We are already an hour and 4 minutes in. We're going to take ourselves a quick little commercial breaky break. When we come back, we will have the breakdown of the recruiting classes and then the special announcement at the end of the show. You're listening to Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. I'll be right back after this.
What's up, sports fans? Are you looking for the latest on Northern California sports? Then take a trip out west with me, your host, Gina G, on Reppin' the NorCal Sports, right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. I'll be bringing it to you all the way live every Monday at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. And it's always a packed show. I'll bring you everything Dynastic 49ers, the bite of the San Jose Sharks, torture of the San Francisco Giants, the Golden State Warriors that we still believe. Then take you across the bay to the rise and grind of the Oakland A's. I've got you covered on college ball from the Cal Bears to the Stanford Cardinal, so that no matter what, reppin' in NorCal sports is always reppin' the Bay. So if you bleed red and gold, or you're looking to keep an eye out west in them thar hills, don't miss me, Gina G, on reppin' in NorCal sports. Catch me every Monday at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, and I'll have your fandom repped harder than a trio of defenders guarding Stephen Curry before his buzzer beater is Gucci.
Sports fans, do you like teams that are tough, cities that are tougher, and fan bases that are passionate about their teams? How about teams that are historic and stadiums that are iconic? Then you belong in Chicago, and you need to check out Chi-Town Weekly. Join me, Adam Kernan, every week as we keep up with all things Chicago sports. Bears, Bulls, Blackhawks, Cubs, White Sox. We'll cover them all, plus more. The Windy City is always buzzing, and we'll keep you up on all the big games and major stories. So tune in to Chi-Town Weekly every week right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Back with segment number two of Set Point here on iSports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. I thought I had shut off Auto DJ, which was my bad, but my apologies. That was a little bit of a slip up on my part. But we are back with segment number two of Set Point, and we are basically going to get into the final portion of the show, which is basically the top 10 recruiting classes. This is recruiting classes when it comes to freshman classes as well as transfers that basically went to a certain team. But before we continue, definitely do check out all of our shows on IE Sports Radio, such as Chi-Town Weekly with Adam Karnick. Adam just celebrated his 100th episode of Chi-Town Weekly, and also Gina G will be returning momentarily with Reppin' to NorCal Sports. And the drop that you briefly just listened to was The Show That Never Sleeps with Harrison Glazer and Pierre Moss. And Mike Pat is excited for part 2. So let's jump on into that recruiting class. So number 10 is North Carolina. Their notable transfer is Charlie Nigo, who graduated from Notre Dame, and she is a graduate transfer. So, for me, I think this is huge to see North Carolina on the top 10, just because they have incoming freshmen such as Sadie Swift, Anita Babich, Ava Swain, Liv Mogridge, Maddie May, Ella Bostic, and Candace Shea. For me, it's really... I was stunned to see North Carolina at number 10. I'm like, that's quite... When you're top 10 in recruiting class, you have taken a huge step from not being on this list from a year ago all the way up to being in the top 10. And it's quite impressive. And North Carolina, I think, is underrated when it comes to the ACC. The only problem is that I feel that they're not going to keep up with Pitt, Georgia Tech, and Louisville. I don't know if they'll keep up with Notre Dame, though I think Notre Dame is kind of going to be iffy. I'll have to see where they're going to be at. But North Carolina being number 10 is quite something, and Mogridge is a Fab 50 selection from Volleyball magazine back in 2022. And before I continue on with 9 through 1, we have BYU, Michigan State, Northwestern, UCLA, Texas A&M, North Carolina State, Purdue, Kentucky, Duke, and Long Beach State as honorable mentions. So I'm surprised I should also make note, I'm surprised NC State wasn't top 10 either, just because they bolstered their roster quite a bit. Anyway, jumping over to 9, we have Pitt, who, in terms of their freshman class, added Rachel Jepson, Dylan Griffin, Courtney Bazzario, Cam Ennis, and Juliana Dalton. And then their freshman is Dylan Griffin and Rachel Jepson. And then the transfers are Courtney Bazzario and Juliana Dalton. So, while it is not... Oh, okay. Oh, so UNC's freshman class was ranked number 8 on prepvolleyball.com. Yes, that's the website. And yeah, I'm not surprised to see them top 10 either. I think North Carolina is becoming more of a volleyball school than maybe a basketball school, but that's a bit of a stretch. I'm just kidding. They'll forever be a basketball school. But back to Pitt, while the incoming freshmen and number of transfers don't scream big time, the one thing that does scream big time is Courtney Bazzario, as well as Juliana Dalton. Juliana Dalton was huge in terms of transferring, and Courtney Bazzario was also big time right there. I've seen Courtney Bazzario play. She could also set, but I don't think she's going to get that chance to set. It's not like when Catherine Plummer was setting back at Elisa Nogale High School. She wasn't setting for Stanford. That's not going to happen. So for Pitt, I'm not surprised to see them in the top 10 of the recruiting classes. I think this is going to be a Pitt team that is going to be this is going to be a Pitt team that looks really good on paper, and I think it's going to challenge anyone and everyone that stands in their way. And welcome Aaron X into the chat room. He says BY who, referring to BYU losing to Purdue in the Sweet 16. Aaron X is the host of our Indiana show, the Crossroads Pod, going on every Saturday at 8 a.m. Pacific Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Definitely check that out. BY who, that's amazing right there. I gotta give a little chuckle on that. So good one, Aaron. So jumping over to number 8, we have Baylor in the top 10 recruiting class. Incoming freshmen: Avery Carlson, Alexis DaCosta, Brianna Denny, Sophia Keene, Ali Sizek are your incoming freshmen. And then their transfers are Mallory Talbert, who transferred from Texas A&M. So, for me, Baylor, like I said, I was a little harsh on them when it came to them being too high, but I think this freshman class, as well as their players from last year, and getting Mallory Talbot is huge. I think Baylor is, like I said, I think Baylor is going to be good. I think these players are going to complement Baylor. I think they're a future good team. I don't think they're going to be a win-now team, but I think Baylor is going to be up there in terms of really good talent. So for Baylor, I think they're probably going to be locked in at number 2 in the Big 12, and I think they're eventually going to be good in the near future. Right now, though, I think Baylor is going to be a work in progress, but they're going to be entertained to watch when it comes to Baylor fans. Jumping over to number 7 is Penn State, as their incoming freshmen consist of Gillian Grimes, Katie Herta, Alexis Markley, and Mandy Morioka. And then the transfer players include Salasia, Taylor Trammell, who transferred from Purdue. Sorry, Aaron. Zoe Weatherington, who transferred from Utah. Kashana Williams, who I'm familiar with, who transferred from Long Beach State. And then Alasia transferred from Cal State Bakersfield. So for Penn State, this is a good step in the correct direction. Kashana Williams was huge. I was very surprised to see her transfer from Long Beach State to Penn State. Now, it could have been possibly because of the changing of the guard at Long Beach State, but it's still rather impressive that she is going to be on Penn State. And one thing I'm going to miss about Kashana is me interviewing her and her, I wouldn't say her like anxiety, but some of her responses. I always loved interviewing Kashana Williams after games. It was quite nice. So overall for Penn State, this is definitely a step in the right direction. They have a fairly young team, and I think this is going to be quite interesting because, again, new head coach, new players, new personnel, new everything. This is going to be a team that I think is going to be on the midst of a rebuild. But I think Penn State is still going to be that team that we all know and love that is still dominant. It's probably been like forever since they dropped out of the top 25, and I don't think they're going to drop out of the top 25 anytime soon. Jumping over to number 6, we have Wisconsin. So their incoming freshman consists of Ella Warble and as well as I'm probably going to mispronounce this one. Gulsi Gusetekin. And that's pretty much it. She is from Turkey, by the way. So Gulsi is from Turkey. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that last name. And then their transfers consist of Gabby McCaw, who a middle blocker from Boston College, Caroline Crawford, who transferred from Kansas, and Sarah Franklin, who transferred from Michigan State. That was huge right there. So once again, Wisconsin's middle blocker problem is kind of a good one. I think Wisconsin has so many middles that they could maybe have some of them play right side, but it's going to be quite interesting to see who gets playing time. That is up to Kelly Sheffield, but overall, I think that this is a Wisconsin team that, like I said, they're not going anywhere. If you all thought they were going to take a step back, no. And overall, I think this Wisconsin team is going to be fun. They're going to be fun to watch. And I am apparently off my A game today when it comes to these pronunciations. It's McKay instead of McCaw. So my apologies, y'all. So Gabby McKay, the transfer from Boston College. Thank you to ACC Volleyball Talk. I appreciate the correction on that. Trying to get these names down. I totally forgot about her. I'm not going to lie. I totally forgot she transferred. I knew all about the middle blockers except for Gabby. So, oops. So, my apologies on that. But overall, Wisconsin is going to be fun to watch this year. And Nebraska-Wisconsin, circle that on your calendar. Jumping over to number 5, we have Minnesota. Their incoming freshman consists of Carter Booth, a 6'7" middle blocker, Julia Hansen, McKenna Wucherer, and that's pretty much rounding off their freshmen. Their transfers are Arica Davis, who transfers from Ohio State, Nia Gross, who transfers from Michigan State, Elise McGee, who transferred from Kansas, and that's not mixing her up from the other McGee from Baylor. That's a totally different rabbit hole to jump down. And then they also got Miranda Ucher, the sister of McKenna, who transferred from Northern Kentucky. So, and then they also got a new international player, Chloe N. So, there's that too. So, for Minnesota, like I said, this is a deserving team of top 5 status, whether it's top 5 recruiting or top 5 in the preseason polls. I really think that this Minnesota team is going to be good this upcoming season. At first, I thought they were going to take a step back, but looking at their roster, they're not taking any step back anytime soon. I feel Minnesota is going to challenge the big dogs in the Big Ten, and I would not be surprised if they got second in that conference. Like, I think Minnesota plays the best defense of any team in that conference, and I don't think they're going anywhere, in my honest opinion. Like, Hugh McCutcheon has that team going in the correct direction, and what really showed me the light when it came to Minnesota was their win in the Sweet 16 over Baylor. And keep in mind, last year I thought Minnesota was going to get bounced in the round of 32 by Stanford. Well, there's a reason why I'm not an expert. But overall, Minnesota is going to look really good this upcoming season, and no one is sleeping on that team. So jumping over to number 4, we have Florida. Now, this is another team that I bashed in the too high, too low category. Their incoming freshmen consist of Emily Cannon, Carly Hendrickson, Emerson Hoyle, and that's it. Oh, and they also have Alexis Stuckey and Amaya Thomas as well. And then they got A.C. Fitzpatrick from Penn State, Marina Markova from Syracuse, which I thought was big time right there. 6'5" outside hitter. Man, that's a huge transfer. I definitely think that was probably the biggest pickup for Florida. And Rhett Robinson. So, remember how I said Florida doesn't scream at elite team? Well, I think they are a good team in the SEC. They're definitely going to be up there in the SEC. But they're still, to me, a work in progress. I think their players, those players that I just made note of, the freshmen and the transfers, they're going to be huge for Florida's success. If they come up big, they're going to be great this upcoming season. If they don't come up big, then they're kind of going to prove me right. But I think Florida, if those players mesh well with one another, Mary Wise is a great coach. I don't think Florida is going to be a team that anyone wants to face. Now, again, Florida is still a work in progress. The players are still going to need to mesh with one another, and I feel that on paper they're good, but once they hit the court, I want to see them actually do some things, some special things. And that does not include losing to Florida State. That was, I wouldn't say that was bad, but it was kind of surprising, but Florida State is darn good. Mike Pat, you could definitely vouch for me on that one. I think that Florida team is, but back to Florida, I think Florida is going to be really good. And looking at their team on paper, again, they look really good, especially with Alexis Stuckey, just who got her reps when it came to the Pan Am Cup, but can she as a freshman mesh well with some of the experienced players? But we'll see. And yes, Mike, I definitely agree. Florida State is going to be up there. If in case you missed it, Mike, I definitely have Florida State as my snub team from one of the top 25. So there was that. Jumping over to number 3, we have Nebraska. Now, remember when I was saying Nebraska's freshman class looks promising? Here's their freshman class. Becca Alec, 6'3" middle blocker. Maisie Bosiger, 5'6" defensive specialist. Hayden Kubik, which I imagine I'd put my money on her being the younger sister of Maddie Kubik. 6'2" outside hitter. Maggie Mendelson, 6'5" middle blocker. And that pretty much rounds off their incoming freshmen. And then they also got Caitlin Horde, a 6'4" middle blocker from Penn State. That was big right there. That was huge right there. Getting Caitlin Horde was huge. And I think they kind of suffer from... Okay, when I say the word suffer and middle blocker problem, this is not a bad problem. This is a good problem to have. Middle blocker problem is really good because you have so much depth in that middle blocker position. Look at what Wisconsin had to go through. They lost Danielle Hart, and all that was left was Dana Retke. But enter Anna Smrek. She basically took over when it came to that NCAA tournament. And she kind of took over when Danielle Hart went down. Not that was a good thing. It was obviously bad that Danielle Hart went down, but her injury kind of paved the way to unlock a new weapon. So when I say middle blocker problem, it's not a bad problem. It's a good problem to have because you have so much depth on that middle blocker and you have so much height, which you could put a player on the right side or on the left side. It's just all about adapting to said positions. But Nebraska, I am not surprised to see on this recruiting list at number 3. I'm surprised they're only number 3. I think they could have been number 2, but looking at the top 2, you're going to see what happens. So number 2 just so happens to be USC. So if I'm not mistaken, USC is the only team on this list, yes, only team on this top 10 recruiting class list to miss the playoffs. So, yeah, that's going to be a running theme for USC. Last year they missed the playoffs, or not the playoffs, the NCAA tournament. And they've missed the NCAA tournament the past 2 seasons. We can give them a mulligan for the 2020 season, but last year I think could have been a whole lot better. So their incoming freshmen consist of Jordan Wilson, Megan Verbeist, and Adonia Famuina, Madison Madison, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that last name. Pietsish? Yeah, you get what I mean. Danielle Thomas-Nathan, Gala Trubint, and Riley McInnes. Remember how I said Riley McInnes and Adonia Faumuina were going to be big time for USC this year? I was not lying. Those are your 2 players in terms of freshmen to watch for, and I really think that they have what it takes. I definitely think that Faumuina can really work well on not just the right side, but the left side and possibly the middle as well. And she could also play center too. But she mainly plays right side. So I really think Adonia is going to be huge. And McInnes, obviously, she wants to have her father's legacy, just like Willie, who played football at USC. So there was that. And now jumping over to their transfers, they got Skylar Fields from Texas, which was really huge. Kalia Williams, who transferred from Washington State, also huge. Lindsey Miller, who transferred from Notre Dame, which I can also see is huge. And then Kelly Berry, a graduate libero, who transferred from UCLA, which I guess is kind of huge. So, yeah, USC, there's no excuse for USC this year. If USC can't make the NCAA tournament with promising freshmen and Skylar freaking Fields, as well as Kalia Williams, I don't know what to say about USC. The curse of McHaley is real. I'm just kidding. But USC has no excuses to make the NCAA tournament. They have to make the NCAA tournament. They're ranked in the top 25. They're the only team that missed the NCAA tournament that is in the top 25 in the preseason. And this number 2 recruiting class is so good. Like, they have so much talent. It's all about actually putting that talent to good use and actually putting that talent on the court together and just basically getting the job done against any team that stands in their way. I get it. They faced a lot of stiff competition in the Pac-12. But they shouldn't be losing to the likes of Denver. No offense to all the Denver fans, but USC 9 times out of 10 does not lose that match. Like, I know USC is good, and I know they don't have the the same USC team back when they had April Ross. I know they don't have the same team back when they had Sammy Bricio or Kalia Lanier or all those other talented players in the past. But this USC team has potential, and I really think that this USC team can make the NCAA tournament. I would also not be surprised if they actually pulled upsets earlier in the season. Like, making sure they don't pull upsets on the last day of the season, because they only had one true upset, and that was against UCLA. They did have a good win over a then-ranked Colorado team, but they weren't ranked in the top 90 in terms of RPI, so there's that. All right, so that is that for USC, and the number one team in terms of recruiting class rankings is Texas. So their incoming freshmen consists of Emma Halter, 5'5" libero, Mariana Singletary, 6'4" middle blocker, Devin Kahahawai, 6'4" outside hitter, McKenna Miller, 6 foot outside hitter, and Marina Crownover, 5'10" setter. Their transfers include Jenna Ewart, 5'10" setter from Colorado, Bella Bergmark, 6'2" middle blocker from Cal, Maddie Skinner, 6'2" outside hitter from Kentucky. Huge loss for Kentucky, mind you. Zoe Fleck, 5'6" libero. And Keonile Akana, 5'9" libero from Nebraska. Like I said, when it came to Nebraska being the number one team, they lost... Or, I'm sorry, not Nebraska being the number one team. Texas being the number two team. They lost Nalani Iosia to Michigan State. No problem. They got Zoe Fleck. And they also got Keonile Akana from Nebraska. Though she didn't really start all that much, as that was courtesy of Kenzie Knuckles, who started the libero position. But for Texas, this is a stacked team. This is a team that, like I said, if they don't make the Final Four, I don't know what to say, because boy howdy, this is probably Texas's deepest team I've seen in a while. Their last NCAA championship came in 2011 when they knocked off Oregon in the final. I really want to see this Texas team do great things. I think Texas is going to take that next step. Last year they lost in the Elite Eight, and I was rather surprised they lost in the Elite Eight, but then again they lost to Nebraska, which, then again, that's not really a surprise. So for Texas, they have to win now. And then Logan Eggleston, obviously, with their currently on the team right there, there's no doubt in my mind this is a very talented Texas team. Like, Maddie Skinner and Logan Eggleston, that's not even fair. Like, they lost Skylar Fields. No big deal. Let's go get some other players. Like, I just think it's quite amazing. Like, yes, they didn't really get the outside hitter talent that I thought they would have gotten, but this is a Texas team, which you also got to add Kayla Caffey to the mix, that no one is going to be brave enough to take down. I think this is a Texas team that is going to be so good, man. Like, I'm just interested to see how this Texas team does. Do I think they can go undefeated? Doubtful. Like, every team suffers a loss, except for that Louisville team that went undefeated in the regular season. But either way, Texas on paper looks like they can go undefeated in the regular season, but I have them at least losing one match. I'm not going to say who. I am not a psychic, but they're not going to have any bad losses. Let's get that out of the way. If anything, they'll lose to probably a worthy opponent like an Ohio State or a Minnesota. Either way, this is a Texas team that is here to stay, ladies and gentlemen, as they are your number one recruiting class of 2022, according to Volleyball Magazine. So, while they aren't number one in the AVCA coaches polls, they do have one of the top recruiting classes in 2022. They are the number one recruiting class, and this is going to be an entertaining season in terms of NCAA women's volleyball. I think this is going to be a year where it's going to be wide open. heck, maybe a double-digit seed could possibly swoop in and make a deep run into the NCAA tournament. Because once the NCAA tournament starts, everyone's 0-0 when no one really cares what you do. So that is that for the recruiting classes breakdown, and that is almost going to do it for Set Point. Before we go, we do have that special little announcement for Season 4 of Set Point. So, as we all know, this is the Season 3 finale of Set Point, but Season 4 begins next week, as basically I will have a special guest. So my guest is, for the time being, unless something happens, my guest will be, can we get a drum roll please? Dylan Klein. So Dylan Klein is the #1 recruit in the 2022 high school boys volleyball class, and he is a freshman at USC, and he's going to play men's volleyball at USC. And there is a lot to dissect when it comes to Dylan Klein. His family is very athletic. I want to say his aunt was the head coach of Marymount High School, who went undefeated last season at 35-0. And Dylan Klein's story is going to be so huge, and I've already penciled him down for next week, and I'm really excited to have Dylan on the show. I really think Dylan is going to be great for the show, and he has listened to Set Point a couple times, and again, it's going to be fun to have him on the show, and I really think it's going to be great times with him. So Dylan Klein is your guest next week, as he'll be kicking off the first episode of Season 4 of Set Point. We're already in 4 seasons of Set Point. My goodness. But that is going to do it for this week's episode of Set Point and the Season 3 of Set Point. You already know what time it is. It is time we drop that beat, because I'm about to dip like a banana in chocolate. You feel me? Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Set Point. I really do appreciate you all tuning in. If you listen live, I appreciate you. If you listen on the playback, I appreciate you. If you listen at work, I appreciate you. If you listen anytime, any place, anywhere, I appreciate you. Shout out to everyone in the chat room: Adam Karnick, Davidson Crooks, Mike Pat, Aaron X, and more importantly, ACC Volleyball Talk. I really do appreciate y'all tuning in to the live chat and keeping me company on this Monday evening. I gotta get me some grub, but until then, for everyone here at IE Sports Radio, this is Teran Rodriguez signing off. You all have yourself a great rest of the week. I will be at Long Beach State on Saturday for the Pepperdine Long Beach State women's volleyball scrimmage. If you're there, definitely come say hi to me. I'll be at the scores table, and yeah, I definitely want to meet y'all in person. I will see you Friday for the 100th episode of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Volleyball season's upon us, ladies and gentlemen, and Season 4 is here for Set Point. I will see you all next week. Until then, have a great night, have a great week. Remember to apply your sunscreen, because it's still summer, technically, but it's winding down. But other than that, enjoy the week of volleyball. High school volleyball is back in session as well. And I will see you Friday for SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Peace!